Shut up and sit down.
Brilliant. We've got the lovely Paula Harmon with us this evening. She's going to be talking about all her novels that she's written, a marvelous amount of novels that you've written there, Paula. Tell us a bit
I
more about that, because it's not just about writing, is it?
no, I have. This is my shelf of things that I've written. Some of them I've co-written, and I also give talks about some of the things that I find out in my research for some of my historical mysteries, and they're
Oh.
chiefly about the Edwardian and late Victorian women and what they actually achieved, as opposed to what people think they didn't achieve.
So you do talks, you also do workshops as well, where people can come along and you sort of give them tips and hints and work through stuff with them. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I've got one workshop where I talk about creating a sense of place in your writing. So, ways to do that, because every writer gets stuck somehow trying to describe things, and they don't know. Maybe they're describing something they're not familiar with.
Mm.
So, for example, you might be writing science fiction, and obviously you've never seen this planet X or whatever. Where would you go for tips to be able to describe that?
Mm.
Or in my case, in one instance, I had to describe horses walking on ice or running on ice, and I didn't even know if that was possible. So how did I do that? Using different ways to make a sense of place. It's not just visual, it's remembering to get in all your other senses, your sense of smell, what you can hear, what you can touch potentially. So I get in all that as well.
That's
Um,
brilliant. Yeah,
yeah.
because I've got to be honest, it's easy to forget that, isn't it? It's easy to forget those elements of a story to make the reader really engrossed in that world. So, that's a really handy workshop. And they'd find out details about that on your website,
Yeah,
wouldn't you?
I mean, I haven't got any running at the moment, but if you want to invite me to one or have me do one at your place, then I'd be happy to do that. So
Brilliant. Okay. Now, your fiction that you write, obviously you say you do a lot of research and it's all historical fiction. You also talk about going down a rabbit hole. Now, it's
yes,
really easy to do a rabbit hole. I just wondered, have you got any tips on how to get out of being in a rabbit hole?
no, because I quite like being in a rabbit hole. um, I think that I mean, not all of my books are historical, or not all of them are mysteries, but they mostly are.
Mm.
And so obviously, but my key things, they're very character driven, and I'm interested in the person who I'm
Yeah.
talking about and her world. I don't want to make her anachronistic. I want to make her a strong woman in her era, but she's also got to be in that era. So there are things she can't do or will be so difficult for her to do that it makes it unrealistic to assume that she'd do it.
Mm.
So I have to work out what her restrictions are, where she would be able to push the boundaries, where she wouldn't, but also just the general things about how long it would take to get somewhere, how quickly, how much you could communicate before telephones were widely owned, and certainly before mobile telephones. So it's things like that. But when I go in, I find all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And this book, I'll just show you that I picked this book out to show you. This is a book that I found in my bookshelves when somebody said, "What's the oldest book you've got?" It isn't actually the oldest, but it's one of them. And this was one that my dad effectively left me, or rather, I rescued from the stuff that after he died. And it's a book of travel dated 1912, a guide to home and foreign resorts, and it's got maps and descriptions of resorts from in Britain and all around the world. It's got advertisements for things.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
it's even got how long it takes to get to somewhere by ship and how much it costs first or second class, all of that sort of thing. It also tells you little things about how this is obviously aimed at the relatively wealthy and the wealthy, because it
Yeah.
tells you things like how much it's going to cost to hire a car in Switzerland and things like that. But some of it is also very useful because it gives you a bit of an insight into what life was like if you were traveling, which I didn't really use a great deal, but I was able to use little snippets. But one of the most fascinating things in here was what you need to pack when you're traveling around the world. And it included, this was by ship, and it included a recommendation that you pack 2 sets of knickers, basically. One set for on board ship, which you would consider disposable. And by disposable, what the writer meant was that at the end of the voyage, you'd either chuck them overboard or you'd hand them to the stewardess, who might be quite grateful to get some nice undies.
Oh my God, seriously?
Seriously.
Oh my God.
And I thought, I don't really know which is the worst image of all these Edwardian knickers, which are, quite substantial, floating down, around the Mediterranean, or some poor woman being part of this grubby underwear. So it's just, just things like that, just so fascinating.
I was going to say, turn that into a modern thing. Could you imagine getting off a British Airways flight and just handing your underwear over to the stewardess?
Well, exactly. And things like in the newspapers, because I like to look in the British newspaper archives to get a feeling for what's going on in the world. To get especially because my Margaret Desmarais series is set in a lead up to World War I, so I needed to have that anchor. And there's also a lot of stuff about suffragettes, so I needed to know what was really being said. Some of it's quoted, some of it's paraphrased, some of it's just in the background. But then you also find these really weird little funny articles that you'd get now, like one which got in there, which was about a cat that stopped the tram running because it just sat in front of the tram and refused to move. And eventually it sort of disappeared, and they had no idea where it had gone. And then when the tram arrived where it was, they discovered it was sitting underneath in the warm, and had travelled all the way across London under the tram. So, and it was just funny bits like that. So just real life, I like to get that sort of in there as well.
Yeah. And you talked about researching what boundaries they might have had. And obviously your characters are very strong, driven female characters. So how do you get round it if it's something you really want your character to do, but you feel historically they wouldn't have been seen as a woman to do that?
Well, I think my character's a pathologist, and she works in a London hospital, and there were women doing that sort of thing. There weren't very many. She has a constant battle on her hands to perhaps be the senior person when she should be, and there's a man over her, and so she has to sometimes compromise. She has a battle when she gets married to stay working, which may have not been quite as much of an issue for a doctor as it would have been for a nurse or a teacher, but it's still there. And then there are sort of like social things. What can you do socially if you're in a job or in a class where your reputation really does matter? Yeah. So you can't just decide, well, I'm just going to chuck all of that out of the equation. She can't, for example, just go and move in with somebody or be seen going, sleeping with somebody outside of marriage and not risk losing her job, which is also her income, and potentially her reputation, which may stop her from being employed again. So those sorts of things she would probably think twice about. They would have to be worth doing. But other things, if she wanted to push her point of view in landlords association, saying, the housing here is inadequate, you should do something about that. There is evidence that women did do that sort of thing. So she's not on her own. And although maybe not the majority of women did, some did. So I, feel quite justified in doing that. I think, sometimes maybe they move about more than a lot of women would have done, but things were starting to change quite significantly in the lead up to World War I. And obviously in World War I, it completely changed. Yeah. So the seeds were being sown. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that your favourite historical era? Or is it just something
I don't really know. I think I've really fallen in love with it. It's going to sound completely irrelevant, but I love the clothes. But it's just a very interesting era in the lead up to World War I, because everybody tends to think of it as the Titanic era with the beautiful dresses and a lot of wealth. But actually, it was something like 1% of the population had 70% of the wealth. Yeah. And something like 30% had 70% of the wealth. And the majority of people were either fairly poor or very poor,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of social unrest at the time, and I tried to reflect that without it being, I mean, I'm not that making it maybe sound makes it sound a bit boring, but hopefully it's not.
Yeah.
It's just the background in which she's working,
Yeah.
because she's working in a hospital for the poor, so
Yeah.
she's mixed up with a lot of people who are suffering from that.
Yeah.
And she's very conscious. She's going home to a house where certainly later on somebody else is cooking her dinner for her, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Different sides of the coin, as it were. Now, bringing us up to date, obviously, your new book is actually part of the Kirkglen Guild series, or will be part of a series, isn't it? The Incomer. Tell us how that came about.
Right. Okay. Well, I've got a copy here, so I can hold it up and show you.
Fantastic.
And I think this. Sorry, my light's reflecting. I'm trying to get it where it's not.
That's it. Yeah.
So, The Incomer actually was a book that I started as a short story when my husband bought me a laptop and said, "You've been talking about getting on with your writing for years, and we've had children and careers and all the rest of it. Here's a laptop, just get on with it." So it was a short story initially, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And the idea of it was, I had this character who was watching a doomed romance unfold. That was how it was going to start out. Right. And it was all seen through her eyes. But as it grew, it started to be about her as well. And the romance situation completely shifted as well. And just to say, the main character in it is, she's a sister of a man who's become a werewolf. And a couple of the people who read it, the compliment I get from it, this is not normally my sort of thing, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
If you're expecting some man to be running around with his chest out, howling at the moon, you're not really going to get that. This is about people who have got caught up in a situation that they feel slightly out of control. They've gone somewhere where she thinks she's going to be safe, and guess what? It's not safe. So she's dealing with grief as well. And as I say, she came out of it no longer an observer, but as somebody who's actually central to the plot. And she's got her own journey, not only with her brother, not only with the grief, but also with who she initially thinks is the girlfriend of her brother, who turns out to be slightly something different, and holds up a mirror to her and says, helps her to heal and helps her to come through it. Yeah. I don't know if that you've read it, so I don't know whether that explains
I've got to be honest.
well.
I would agree. It's not something I would normally have read, but I absolutely loved it. And, it's really hard to talk about it without giving anything away. And I don't want to give anything away, but it is a really, really good book. And I remember saying to you afterwards about a specific thing that happened near the end. And I said, is there going to be another story? And obviously you've made it into the Kirkglen Guild series. So I'm presuming there's going to be book 2 and possibly book 3 coming off.
Yeah, that's the plan. So yeah, that's working on it in the background at the moment. I've got something else in the pipeline, but that's certainly there. I'm sort of plotting it out, and it will be in the same town. There'll be some of the existing characters and some new characters. And obviously some of the very existing characters definitely going to be back, because
yeah. Oh God, yeah, absolutely, because they're really good. They really are good. And I can't say anything because
and it's not historical.
It's not.
It's sort of fantasy effectively, but it's contemporary. So it's
it's set in Scotland, isn't it?
It's set in Scotland, but not in any real place in any real community. So.
Oh God, I wish it was. It's really good. I mean, you got a sense. You talk about a sense of place, where the very first conversation we had in this interview, and I think you captured that really well. The smell of the pine, and it really did feel like, as a reader, that I was there. I mean, maybe that's because I love Scotland. I've been there so many times, so I could really picture a place in Scotland that it could really be.
Yeah, I could too. I mean, somebody to say, could you set it in Dorset? And I said, I'd need more space than Dorset's got. So, I just wanted, and I've got Scottish roots, although they're not Highlands, they're still Scottish roots. So I have very fond memories of Scotland. And I don't know whether that's fed into it. I don't know. Sometimes stories just find you, and that was one of them.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. It's a really good story as well. So obviously the book, The Incomer, I'll put a link to that underneath this, and obviously to your website, so that people, if they want to go along purchase, they can. Now, talking about writing, you said that your husband gave you a laptop and wanted you to just get on and write. but you've always written, haven't you? So what was the first story that you wrote and how old
Oh,
were
well,
you?
actually, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think of a bit waiting list because somewhere above my head, near enough, not quite, is a box under a bed, and it's got some of my early writing in it from when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Um, but not the very first. I think the first story I wrote was Clanger fan fiction. I seem to remember just writing it in a story in school about a clanger. And before that, I used to tell stories to myself at bedtime,
Yeah.
and I couldn't sleep. I still really bad sleeper even now, and I still do it now. The difference now is I tend to be chewing over some kind of plot point, so it tends to keep me awake rather than send me to sleep.
Yeah.
But I used to tell myself stories, and when my sister and I shared a room, and when she was old enough to talk, she used to say, "We should just shut up." I can look at hear you in the background. So I've always done it really, and I think, like I said, it was the plan. But life got in the way. I had to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Then I got married, and I had children. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll have a baby, and I have loads of time. And even if that was true generally, I had a hyperactive son, so really wasn't true. So it was some time before I had the time to do it. But I was always writing little snippets and little
Yeah.
bits and bobs and little ideas down and sort of drafting things. And some of those are now coming to fruition. So
Yeah, no, that's lovely because obviously you write with other authors as well, but you also have standalone books as
yeah,
well, don't you? And a lot of your sort of fantasy fiction, as it were, other worlds are in those books, aren't they?
yeah, I think. I mean, I think what I would say to anybody who's out there, whatever age they are, is don't give up and think there's going to be a point when you're just not going to be able to do it. There isn't. It may not be now. It
Mm,
may be in the future. And I think what I learned in the interim was useful
mm,
for my writing. The writing I would have, if I could have started writing at 20, and the writing that I actually did later on, there's a difference because I'd learned more about the world. That wouldn't necessarily be true of everybody, but
no.
I was quite a naive, sheltered sort of person. So I think that some people could write fantastic stuff in their 20s. I don't think I did. So, I think that learning was good for me.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think was, so I got that laptop and I started writing things down, and then eventually somebody encouraged me. It's a bit of a long story. Yeah, 2 years after that, my dad died, and at the funeral was the little girl from the village, that had been the other weirdo with me, and we'd made up stories and plays, and she was the one who understood where I was coming from, and vice
Mm,
versa. But we'd sort of lost touch after university, and but anyway, she was there because she remembered my dad. And she said, "Are you still writing?" And I said, "Mm." And she said, "Well, I am. Get on with it, more or less." I mean, it was a bit more polite than that because it was a funeral, but you know what I mean. We're still in touch now. But after that, I thought, you know what? She's right. And I'd had a couple of people say to me, "Oh, well, you're in your 40s now. It's never going to happen." And I suddenly thought, I don't have to listen to them. I do not have to listen to the internal voice saying it's too late.
yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
So I entered a competition, got runner up, joined a writers group, and then I just started writing. In that first year, I was writing a lot of short fiction. As you say, some of it was fantasy. It was from all over the place. Some of it was contemporary, some of it was fantasy, and it was just like an outspill of stuff that had been bottled up for
Yeah.
years. And the funny thing about it was that we'd moved to Wales when I was 8, which is where I met this little girl, and I wasn't very happy. I wasn't happy for 10 years, utterly miserable. And some of that was me, but I was utterly miserable. So I would look back at that time and think, oh, I hated it. When I started writing, I started remembering the things that I'd loved. And
Mm,
the forest came alive, the river came alive,
mm,
the things that I did in my family came alive. Some of the bullying suddenly went into focus, and I could look at it from the outside and go, that was awful, but now I can put it to one side. I can describe it,
yeah.
but I'm no longer that little bullied girl. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. It was so emotional. And
Yeah.
I'm not a particularly emotional person, but it was just an
Yeah.
outpouring of
Yeah.
stuff. And then I started to settle down, you'll be glad to know, into something slightly more calm.
But like you say, with age comes experience, and you
Yeah.
can use that now, that knowledge in producing the work that you really want to publish. So, and like you said, you pointed to your bookcase behind you. It is stacked with books that
Yeah,
you
they're
have.
not all mine. I hasten to add some of these are research books.
Yeah, but you've still written a fair amount. I mean, you've got, we haven't even touched on the Murder Britannica, which is
Yeah, I can tell
uh,
you about Murder Britannica was one of the first novels I wrote. So it wasn't exactly the first novel. Actually, The Incomer was the second one. The first one's still in a drawer somewhere. Incomer was actually the second one, but it's just been through lots of iterations. But the third one was Murder Britannica, and I wrote it as a bit of a joke for my mother-in-law. So it was a bit of a mixture of, if you remember that sort of thing, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. I think I'm actually too young for that, but I do know what it is. And a mixture of that and the old-fashioned murder mystery where people are dropping dead, everybody's fairly horrible, and all of the people that are still alive care about is the fact that Daddy was the one who had the key to the wine cellar, and now he's dead. They don't know where it is, that sort of thing. So it was just supposed to be very tongue in cheek. And the main character, or one of them, was a really awful mother-in-law. And I wrote it for my very lovely mother-in-law because we share this love of mystery fiction. And the other female main character is sort of named after her, and she's a detective. So she's a kind of a Roman Miss Marple. Initially, she's got her knit spinning with her, and she's the only person with any sense in the entire book. So the first one's a bit mad, and it's a bit of a Marmite book. But then after that, that was 2018. In 2019, I wrote the follow-up, having realised I should have set the first one in Dorset because I could have marketed it better.
yeah.
So I've set the second one in Dorchester, Roman era Dorchester, and it was like late November 2019 when we were doing the literary festival, and I didn't really have time to market it, and I thought I'll do it in January. And then my world imploded in January, and then after that, of course, the whole world imploded. So that never got. But in the meantime, I then wrote the third one, which is set in a version of Blandford. It's not really Blandford, but it's like in my head, I can see the town, and that's where it is. So and so they're more conventional murder mysteries, but it's the same slightly mad, dysfunctional family. So
yeah. And do you obviously I know that you do a lot of drawing and sketching. So have you done any cover work or illustrations for any of your books?
I haven't actually. I didn't have the confidence to start with, and I don't think I really was good enough. And digital graphic design is a very different skill to what I do, which can be quite okay, or quite sort of like, my goodness, what on earth is she thinking? And I'm still learning, really. I didn't do art at school beyond 14, or whenever you have to choose your O levels. So I'm still learning. I don't know. I'd love to be able to draw my characters. I can draw people that look like people, but they don't look like my characters, and I'd love to be able to do that. So.
That's what made me think about it, because obviously I'm thinking about the cover, particularly for the Murder Britannica, and I just wondered, because you talk about your mother-in-law and what have you, whether you would ever sketch any of your characters.
I don't. It's really one of those. I'm one of those people who don't see their characters very well. I'm a bit face blind generally, and I can sort of see them. I can see their shape. So Lucretia, to be fair, the annoying mother-in-law, she's sort of an alter ego of me. So she's short, she's middle-aged. By our standards, by their standards, she'd been old, but she's middle-aged, she's short, she's plump. She thinks she's right about everything. So I suppose I see her as me, really. But the covers, they are Roman. It's Roman art that I've turned into the covers. So would I? Yeah, I'd love to. I just don't think I'm quite there yet. I think I've done little sketches with it, and but I've never really done anything. I had a sort of an image of, lots of Roman people just running around, because the first one's a bit like that. But I haven't got any further than just doing rough ideas.
But I mean, your sense of humor obviously does come out. You can see little bits when you're reading your work that there's your humor in there. And I know that you've obviously written little short plays and scripts. I know that because I took part in one with you. And I just wondered, do you think you'll do any more of those? Because it was really very good.
I'd love to, and I'd love to do it with you. I have to be honest, I'd love to do it with you.
Paula wrote a short play based on Jack and the Beanstalk, and it was just really very funny. And I just love the idea of taking, particularly even the Ladybird books, and making them into these little sort of farce of what they
Yeah,
actually are in the book. And that was a pleasure. And I just thought you should do more of that because it's really funny. And
I'd
it was
love
a
to. I
joy.
just, I'd love to. I and there's in my website, if you, I don't know what you'd have to look under, trying to think. As one was an interview with the laundry fairy, which is where somebody's interviewing the laundry fairy who lives in my airing cupboard and loses all the socks or mucks them up, or and she's related to the dishwasher fairy who loses the teaspoons, and she's it's an interview with her about me. So it was a way to describe myself, I suppose, and I just quite like that. And the Jack and the Beanstalk thing, it was is a grumpy Jack as a teenager who's sort of like just annoying his mother. And I suppose I had a teenager when I wrote it. I did try at the time to get my son to come to writers group and do a dialogue with me. And he went, no, you got to be kidding, Mum. It's not a teenager anymore. He probably would do it now.
It's certainly something we can look into and definitely explore a bit further because I just think it was really funny and I really enjoyed doing it. So yeah. So
I think I like a bit of humour. I think that, like I said, the Margaret books are, this is, just to show you, this is the original copy cover of the first one. They're just in the process of being publishers changing the covers. So these are the current digital covers, and those will ultimately be the paperback covers. So they're a bit different. And like I said, this is what I mean about sort of like, this is way beyond me.
Yeah. They look good. They look good, Paula.
And as I say, even though there's a lead up to something very serious happening, and obviously it's very difficult to stop that from being quite serious in the sixth book, which is when war breaks out, I still like the little absurdities that are going on in life, that no matter how awful things are, not always, there are obviously situations which are so dreadful that it would be impossible to find humor in it, or your mind state is not right to find it. But for most people, most of the time, there's always some really stupid thing that happens that will, in the middle of I just always think of the first time a boy dumped me. We were walking along and I was crying so hard I walked straight into a lamppost, and then we both burst out laughing. We were laughing and crying, goodness knows what. And it's that sort of that little sort of like thing that somewhere in the middle of it all, there's something very silly going on at the same time. And although they're murder mysteries, somebody's dead, there's nevertheless, there are little absurdities happening too,
which is lovely, because that's sort of, to me, that's part of you in the book, if you see what I mean.
I think
it's like bringing your humor into it. So what's next for you? Because you usually, knowing you usually have
so
things.
What's next? Right, so literally what is next is sometimes, sorry about these bits of paper, but it's just I haven't got the actual things at the moment, but this is one of the co-written books, and this is going into the like I said, things that are not my norm. This is with my co-writer Liz Hedgecock, who have written some mysteries with. This is, instead of a mystery, we thought, do you know what, let's try a contemporary fantasy romance. So it's like a cozy romance,
Nice.
set in a seaside town, which is magical, and there are dragons in it. So and I love dragons. I try to get dragons into everything. So that's literally coming out sometime this summer. I'm not quite sure which, because it's not me in control of the date. The sixth Margaret book is that one there, The Deadly Promise. That's coming out in September. And that theoretically is the last, unless loads of people come clamoring at me and say, look, please, we want to know what happens next, because then I'll have to work out what happens next. What I'm actually working on at the moment is a mystery set in Dorset in 1922. And the two characters are a young man and young woman. So they have both got a little bit of baggage from the war, the First World War, that is, but they're theoretically starting their careers and things down in Dorset. Neither of them from Dorset. They've moved to this small town, but they realise that they've come individually. They don't know each other, but they actually have something they're trying to work out, both of them, and then they realise it's the same thing and they have to work together. So that's what I'm working out at the moment. It's quite nice to have some young people that aren't sort of in their 30s or something, and sort of have to get on before they want to have any children or anything. So
oh my God, it sounds amazing. And obviously that's what keeps you awake at the moment, is plotting and working
thinking,
stuff out.
Crikey, there's a plot hole. I forgot why is that happening? I don't know what actually happened, who's actually dead, that sort of thing. So it's
So Paula, as we round up, where can people find you? Where can they find out about all your work?
Right, okay, the best place is my website, which is paulaharmon.com, Harmon with an O. I was doomed to have a surname people can't spell. I had a maiden name that people can't spell, and I married a man named people, but sorry, it's paulaharmon.com. I'm also on Amazon. I'm on Instagram, and you're going to ask me what my Instagram handle is now, and I can't remember.
That's
So
all
you have
right.
to
I
put it
can
in the
pop it
notes.
underneath.
Paula S. Harmon or something like that.
Yeah.
And I tend mostly there, to be honest. That's where you'd see me posting photographs and drawings and paintings that I do. I'm not an expert. Some things I think, oh yeah, that's really good. And sometimes I think, oh gosh, that's terrible. So that's more of that part of me. I'm also on Blue Sky, but I'm not very good at posting there. I really want to get onto TikTok, but I need your help.
Yeah, I've got to be. Yeah, that's a new area for me. Yeah, as well.
Yeah,
But
we need to do that together sometime.
Well, Paula, thank you so much going through everything with us.
Thank you.
There's so much that you've done, and there's probably so much more that we still haven't talked about. But thank you ever so much, and we will catch up again soon, especially when your book
Thank you very
out.
much.
That'd be great. All right, speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.